The festive season is underway in India. Diwali is around the corner and everyone is celebrating the Festival of Lights. However, India's owls are doomed for darkness. It is around this time of the year when owls succumb to the illegal wildlife trade. There are various superstitions around them and they are often used for black magic. In this episode of the Think Wildlife podcast, I interviewed Debangini Ray, who is the founder of the Urban Owl Network. As part of her PhD, she's studying human owl affiliations in Indian cities. Tune in to listen more about her research and the conservation of owls in India's cities and all the superstitions around them.
Sure.
Yep. So, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you so much, Anish, for having me. It's amazing. It's amazing that you've invited me, and I'm always glad to talk about owls and my work.
So, what is the idea behind the Urban Owl project, and what is the idea behind the Urban Owl project?
So, the Urban Owl project actually started from my PhD research. I'm a PhD scholar with MIT World Peace University, and I have always been sort of fascinated with multi-species interactions and ethnographies, in urban spaces, especially in India. And I think, much like everybody else, I have always been fascinated with owls. So, there was a time, I think, post pandemic, I remember. So I get these calls often from my friends and from other people, whoever has my number, to help coordinate some rescues, whatever, urban wildlife rescues. It can be civets, it can be snakes, it's mostly snakes. So during that time, I remember I started getting more calls for owls. And this is Guwahati, which is my hometown. And so that got me a bit interested. It was either a barn owl or a spotted owlet. And also I started, so this owl kept popping up everywhere. There were more owl articles I came across. I also saw an increase in, more reporting of owl rescues in social media around, India, not just in Guwahati. So it was like there was some sign, and that really intrigued me, and I decided to dig deeper. And when I dug deeper, I realized that we hardly have any studies on urban owls in India. We have so many questions, but we don't have any answers. And I think that's when I realized that I really want to do something. And I met my PhD guide, my now PhD guide, Dr. Pankaj Koparde, from Chatur Ullu Lab, and I decided to collaborate with him and do some research. I think that's when he told me that you can also, apply for PhD if that's something you want to do. I always knew I wanted to do PhD, but I mean, I never really thought about what exactly it would be. I think I wasn't prepared at that time, but I somehow knew this was the right moment. This is something I really want to do, and this is something I want to do for the rest of my life. In fact, it sounds pretty, ambitious, and I don't know, too much into the future, but I knew that I would want to definitely focus on urban ecology and human bird or human wildlife interactions, especially urban spaces. So I took him up on this offer and I sat for the exams and the interviews, and I decided that, oh, okay, great. Through my PhD, let me start my research on owls. Of course, hopefully carry it forward even beyond that. So, but there's only so much you can do in 4 5 years, right? There's so much that I think we all need to, there's so much potential for urban owl research in the country. But so far, because of limited time, I have decided to focus on three things. So what I'm looking at, or let's say what the Urban Owl project is looking at, is to understand the threats to owls in different cities in India that might exist. Then documenting citizens' knowledge, attitudes, and perceptions towards owls, the owls that they share their spaces with, right, in the cities. And the third is more of a case study, I would say. So we are trying to get an in-depth understanding of habitat preference and owl occupancy in the city of Guwahati, which is very fast urbanizing. So, hoping to extend this study to other cities, maybe beyond my PhD. So, it's a very multidisciplinary project. I'm not just looking at, it's also multi-species, because I'm not looking at only one particular species of owls, right? And the Instagram page Urban Owl Network is something I use mainly for outreach and to stay connected with citizens and owl enthusiasts and fellow researchers. So that's, I think, the gist of Urban Owl project. Yeah.
And what are the most common species of owls found in urban settings in India?
Uh, okay, so I wouldn't say most common, but I would definitely say that the most widespread would be the eastern barn owl, which is Tyto javanica. So barn owls, as a lot of us might know, are also the most widespread owls. They are found across the world. In fact, not just in India, but in India as well. They are the most widespread, and they're also generalists. They're wide ranging generalists, which means that they have a very broad dietary preference, which is why they can adapt easily, they can survive much better than other owls. So this is something interesting that I keep telling people. It also interests me, because we often think that owls are not very accustomed to sharing spaces with humans. They are not very used to human presence, right? But it's absolutely not the case with barn owls. I mean, barn owls and humans have shared spaces since the earliest of times. So since humans started farming, I mean, we all know this, right? Barn owls have shared resources, spaces, food. There was easy prey in the form of rodents. uh, they used to roost and nest in the barns and the sheds, which is why they're called barn owls. And in fact, I would like to quote Salim Ali here. Salim Ali described barn owls as, quote, inseparable from the haunts of man. And this is pretty amazing. And there's Miriam Darlington, who very beautifully describes in her book Owl Sense. She says that our closeness has developed over time like a marriage, but not an altogether happy one. And I feel this is the most accurate description one can give about the barn owl and human relationship, because I'm pretty sure we can all sort of fathom when things started turning sour, when we had the urbanization, coming up, and habitat fragmentation, and then barn owls had no choice but to embrace cities as their new homes, new habitats, right? So barn owls, I would say, barn owls can really be called an urban owl species, even in India. And then so there's citizen science data. You can search eBird, and we are also collecting a lot of rescue data on owls. And through that, we can also say that some other owls, like the spotted owlet, then there is the brown hawk owl. Uh, Spotted owlet are those small round spotted owls that you see huddled against one another, the cute ones. Yeah, you see pairs of them, or you see four five of them huddled together. That's the one. Brown hawk owl, which sort of looks like a hawk with very large torch like eyes. uh, they're pretty common in urban spaces. You have Indian scops owl as well. uh, Indian scops owl, though, is not found in northeastern cities. It's not found in Guwahati, but it's found here. It's found everywhere else, and it's also pretty much it's often rescued as well. Then you have college scops owl, I would say, at least for Guwahati, because back home, college scops are pretty common in the city. You hear the calls, you often see them as well. And we also have some a species called Asian barred owlet. Asian bar owlet is it's a diurnal owl. It's very much active during the day. You can't see it in the night, and it has a very unique call. You see it perched on a pole in the middle of the day. Again, that's back home in Guwahati. I don't think we have Asian bar owlet anywhere else in at least in central, western, northern, or southern India. So I think we really need more studies to specify which are the owls that have actually managed to adapt themselves to urban scapes in India today. Uh, and yeah, I don't think we are there. We have a nearly good enough idea, through this data, but yeah, that's all I think I can tell you.
Yep, I think the barred owl is only found in Northeast India and Southeast Asia. So, what is the cultural significance of owls in India?
But that's a Pandora's box, to be honest, because I mean, see, humans are obsessed with owls. We can't deny that. That's not just in India. This obsession, it exists across time, culture, space, and if you really dig into, I don't know, stories, folklore, myths, everything, everywhere, you will have owl references, you will have owl stories. And in India, we have so many different cultures, right? And every culture has their own notion, they have their own perception towards owls. Every religion, every culture, every region, I would say. And I really believe that there's very rich and vivid oral storytelling and ethno-ornithology that has survived till date, even now. So in Hinduism, a lot of us may know that the barn owl is associated with goddess Lakshmi, and it's considered as her Vahan. Vahan is basically the vehicle uh, on which a god or a goddess arrives or travels in. So goddess Lakshmi is believed to have, the owl for company and, as a vehicle. So she's always accompanied uh, the owl. But we also have this obsession with the color white. The color white is something, because the other owls you will not see, they're not white. The barn owl is very distinct, as in it's beige, white color. And yeah, because of this, in a lot of parts in India, the barn owls are worshipped. So they are regarded as sacred. They are regarded as lucky, in fact. So if a barn owl enters your house, it means, I mean, it's often believed that there'll be a flow of wealth. You'll suddenly get a lot of money. And also in a lot of cities, I've seen that if a barn owl comes in, some puja is performed also. So in because they want to worship the owl, basically, because it's like goddess Lakshmi herself is coming to the house, that sort of thing. Now, that being said, there are many parts of India where exact opposite perceptions exist, where the barn owls are considered as bad luck. They are feared. So a lot of birds have their melodious tunes and calls, and I know each is distinct, but you're not scared easily by these calls. Now the barn owl has a very it screeches. It has a screech like call, which may be uh, a little different, unique, and especially because they call it night, a lot of people are scared by that call. And that is sort of, they synonymize it with bad luck or some bad omen or something like that. And so they are shooed away, stones are pelted at them. They are not, because they have a habit of roosting and nesting near human habitations, they're not allowed to do that. So it's like a mixture of these two things. But other than this, I would say the small to medium sized dark colored owls, they mostly face bad luck from people, and they are considered as bad luck by people. So in Guwahati, Kolkata, these cities, so barn owl is called Lokhi Pecha in Bengali. So Pecha means owl. In Assamese, it's called Lokhi Pesa. Pesa is again owl. Pesa Pecha. The small dark colored owls like the Asian barred owlet, I would say scops owls, spotted owlets, all of these owls, they are sort of the dark brownish, right? They're not white. They're called as Kalpesa or Kalpecha. Now, Kalpesa can be translated to either owls of death or black owls, black or dark owls. So either way, they're bad omens. In fact, I think so. There's this very interesting perception I've come across recently in Guwahati, where Ganga Jal is sprinkled in the house. To, if by chance there is one of these owls comes inside by mistake, flies inside and gets trapped or whatever, or even comes near the house, flies near the house, Gangajal is sprinkled because, to sort of, I don't know, I mean, do away with the evil spirit or whatever bad omen that the owl might have brought. And that till that, I mean, it's a city. These are citizens who have told me this, and they still believe that. So yeah. And another thing is that I think another interesting fact about the brown hawk owl is that a lot of people have told me that you cannot see this owl, you can only hear it. And if you hear it call at night, then someone in the neighborhood is going to die in the next 48 hours. And this is something I tried to sort of ask them, how do you know this? Do you have any proof? And they all seem to tell me these are all individual stories, right? They all seem to tell me that no, see, I mean, we are all educated, we know this, but this is one thing that they have seen with their own eyes, apparently. So whenever someone in the neighborhood has heard the brown hawk owl call out, somebody has died in the next 48 hours. So these are very deep rooted beliefs, right? And I personally think that it's because we don't really understand, the basic behavioral ecology of owls. And it's the whole thing about night and day, right? I mean, it's very unusual for an owl to be active at night. Is if you look back, when, I mean, we are not nocturnal beings. Right now we are, I mean, we stay awake at night, but early times, the night time was a time when we all slept. It was not a time of activity, right? We were all active during the day, and we saw and observed a lot of birds then. And after we slept, or let's say in the dark of the night, when there was very little light back then, these owls are active, screeching and flying and hunting and all of that. So I think it was very difficult for us to understand their behavior back then. And yeah, I think that's what led to all the fear and the superstitious beliefs that still exist today. These are some of this. This is, in fact, I'm just scratching the surface. There's just so much of perceptions and beliefs that we really need to document. And wherever it's illogical and wherever superstitions exist, I think we should really try and bridge the knowledge gap and make people aware.
And why are barn owls under such severe threat during Diwali every year?
Uh, okay, so two things here I would like to say. One is it's not just barn owls that were under threat. The other large owls like Bevo bengalensis, which is the Indian eagle owl. There was Zelonis, which is the brown fish owl. There are other eagle owls like dusky eagle owl and spot-bellied eagle owl. So basically, all these owls which have, those horns in their head. They're actually not horns, of course, or the ears. They are not even ears. They are just feathers. But basically, in colloquial language, the horned owls were also very much under threat. Yeah, but and the second thing is this IWT, this illegal wildlife trafficking that used to happen for owls was very intense. Honestly, it was probably until about 10 years ago, but it is really going down significantly. Now, whether it is because people are getting more aware, or is it because the law is more stringent now? I mean, we have special task force every year now before Diwali, around Diwali, which I think there are still people apprehended, caught red-handed with owls, illegally captured. But it has gone down a lot. We have data from Traffic India and Wildlife Trust of India to actually prove that. Now, coming back to the why, as I said, goddess Lakshmi and barn owls go hand in hand, synonymous with that. So there's this belief that existed. Again, it's a superstition that existed in most of the, it's mostly in North Indian states, that if you sacrifice the owl, whichever owl it is, if you sacrifice the owl, then either it'll appease the goddess, it'll make the goddess happy. That's one. Another, or there was another alternate belief that if you sacrifice the owl, it means that the goddess cannot leave your house, because how will she leave the house without her vehicle, without the vahan? Which means that your wealth is protected. Your wealth cannot leave the house as well. So just this obsession with wealth. There are also a lot of sacrifices and black magic and other rituals that used to go on. And owl products, not just for sacrifice. I mean, owl talons and eyeballs and feathers and all of that were also in demand uh, in between. So I mean, that's all I think associated with the most ridiculous of reasons, like increasing wealth or gaining wisdom, because owls were considered to be wise. So all of this, but thankfully it's going down, and I hope that it really vanishes for good very soon.
So, what role do owls play in both urban and rural ecosystems?
But owls have appeared this planet much before us, right? I think they have appeared, I think, around about 60 million years ago, and they are evolutionary wonders. They have been evolving since then, and I mean, with their hearing and their eyesight and everything, their hunting prowess, they are apex predators or mesopredators, or key indicators, and all of that, right? So, I mean, they hunt rodents. Most importantly, they hunt the mid-level consumers, I would say, and they suppress them. They keep them in check, and this is true for the case of rural ecosystems as and urban ecosystems. Now it's extended to urban ecosystems, of course, because I mean, rural scapes are diminishing and urban scapes are increasing, but it's the same in both cases. They are very important in suppressing mid-level consumers, and of course. They were regarded as farmers' friends. So, if you talk about rural scapes, they are the best natural pest control agents. And a lot of even in India, in Assam, and recently in Lakshadweep, and of course in other countries, scientists and researchers as well as farmers, they've actually joined hands and tried to introduce these nest boxes for barn owls to come and roost, so that the chemical agents and pollutants can come down, the rodenticides can come down, and barn owls can actually do their job and naturally and very sustainably control the rodent populations. And everybody is happy at the end of the day. You are increasing the population of barn owls, which are going down in a lot of places, and you're also making the farmers happy. Researchers and scientists are equally happy. So that's, and one more thing I would like to say, which we often overlook, is the cultural value, the cultural importance, the cultural services that owls provide. And this is, of course, true for every other, like all other cultures, not just in India, but also in India, there are so many beliefs associated with the owls, right? I mean, so this is something that I feel is we neglect that, and cultural value and ethno-ornithology is equally important. And owls, I think, are one group of birds that humans have always been obsessed with and culturally revere them. So they're in both ends of the spectrum. Of course, they're either seen as very evil and bad omens, otherwise they are revered and worshipped, right? So yeah, I think owls play a very important role both in urban and rural ecosystems. And I feel like there might even be more services that we might not know about, given the fact that we are urbanizing rapidly and we are having very less studies on, owls in urban ecosystems. So we might want to check those out.
So, what are the primary threats to owls, especially in urban ecosystems?
Primary threats. I
Yep.
wouldn't. I don't think I'm. So I wouldn't. I'm not in a stage to categorize the threats as primary or secondary yet, but I can tell you from my research, whatever we have discovered, threats that we have discovered through recorded data on owl rescues, right? Uh, and so the first thing, I think I've already told you about the habitat destruction part. Now, in cities also, so this is urban scapes, right? Urban owls,
Yep.
right? Right. So, I mean, see, I think we all are aware that we are cutting down whatever old and mature trees that we have left in cities. Those old and mature trees provide good nooks and crevices for small owls to roost and nest in. And then we are also cementing for purposes of beautification trees which are dying at the end. So all of this is leading to habitat loss, of course, destruction. Uh, Along with that, there is nest displacement that happens. So these are partly natural and anthropogenic causes which happen because of urbanization, but there are mixed causes, right? Storms might come, and then for beautification purposes a tree needs to be cemented. So there's a lot of habitat loss happening because of which nests are getting displaced, and that's a big threat actually. Apart from that, a very major threat, especially in cities like Mumbai, Pune, Bangalore, even New Delhi, I think, is the Chinese manja. So we have the normal manja, then we have the Chinese manja. It's not just a yarn, just not a string. It's covered with glass shards. So the Chinese manja is so dangerous that it can severely injure humans, even human skin. It can cause severe injuries to human skin. So imagine the injuries that it might cause to an owl or to any bird for that matter, right? So I think we have received a lot of data which points towards the fact that majority of birds in these cities are rescued because of the Chinese manja. Rescued if they are lucky. Otherwise, a lot of them even die. So other threats are ACR poisoning, anticoagulant rodenticide poisoning. So this poisoning we might as well. I mean, we might think that this happens only in farmlands and in rural scapes, but that's not the case. Nowadays, we have peri-urban areas. We have a lot of edge habitats, and the lines between habitats are blurring. So it's not just farmers which use rodenticide. There are a lot of citizens, there are a lot of residents who use rat kill. Like at least in Guwahati, I've seen after speaking to a lot of vets and witnessing it for myself, you have very bad waste disposal systems in cities. You have open garbage dumps, right? Now at night, if you are an urban owl, if you are an owl in the city searching for prey, see, inherently when you are embracing or trying to adapt to urban habitats, your behavioral ecology will change to some extent. It may depend on which species and all of other factors, but it will go through some change. Now, let's say you're an owl, right? And you're flying and you're hunting, you're trying to hunt, and you come across easy prey in the form of dead rats, let's say, in the garbage dump. So if you already have dead rats, why would you go and waste your energy trying to hunt for a live one, right? So you swoop down and you have those dead rats, and a lot of these dead rats are killed, using rat kill or whatever. So their immune system gets severely compromised. And initially, I thought this might be like a one-time thing. It's not that serious of a case, but there's been a lot of discussion around why barn owls' immune systems are so compromised. Because if your immune system is compromised, then other factors kick in and become threats. For example, you collide, your sensory skills are affected. You collide against other structures, or you're not able to digest, or the toxins spread, and there's bioaccumulation happening inside the body we don't know. So there haven't been enough studies to actually figure out what's going on, but most of the mortality rate of barn owls are very high as compared to other owls. So then there are glue traps as well. Glue traps are used to again trap so-called pests, rodents, and all of that. So again, glue traps. If a bird swoops down, and this even it's a very big threat for reptiles as well. Then you're stuck. Your feathers are stuck. Your wings are stuck, and that can provide deadly if human intervention is not there. And then of course there are other threats like urban threats, very urban threats like alien, artificial light at night. Now, a few years ago, up until a few years ago, we didn't have these very ugly, harsh LED lights, right? Now we have these LED hoardings all around the city. We have very harsh lights. We have noise pollution. We have like at marriages or whatever festivals, we have very very high noise. I mean, even humans are like, a lot of people cannot tolerate that noise. Think about owls, which are nocturnal and are active at night. That's their hunting time. And then you have smog. And see, of course, you have to understand that owls rely on their, you know, uh, ears and their eyesight, as well as other factors. Like some barn owls hunt very low. Not some barn owls hunt low because that's the way they hunt, right? And unfortunately, because of this behavior, they also collide against speeding vehicles with that, those very harsh, headlights. And that's one kind of collision that happens. Other collisions that happen are reflective architectures. So you have these glass buildings. There's a lot of reflective walls and other surfaces, and even smaller birds collide against them. Owls are same for owls. Like at night, owls collide against those structures, and when they collide at very high speed, right? So that causes neurogenic, trauma and all other kinds of risks. They freeze and they are in the ground, let's say, and at night there's nobody around to come and help. Citizens may find them in the morning, and by then, maybe stray dogs and cats or cats may have attacked them and caused further injury. So, there's a lot of cases where we've seen that this mobbing and attacks happening by strays. Now, how will and why will strays attack an owl? Can fly, right? So, all of these cases are when the owls have already been compromised in some sort of way. They are there on the ground, they're either injured already or they are in shock. And then again, you have electrocution. And there is one other thing that happens is citizens have this knowledge gap where they don't know how to exactly handle an injured bird, an injured raptor on top of that. So every bird has a different, you can't handle all the birds in the same way. And they have very good intentions. Maybe they want to save the bird, they want to take the bird to the vet or to the forest department. But when you are picking the bird up, let's say, holding the wings like that, you spread the wings and hold them, or in their legs or their talons, or you're wrapping something around them, you don't have the know-how to do that, even if your intentions are really pure. So this further aggravates and worsens the situation. If the owl, let's say, has fractured wings or fractured legs, and you're holding it up, with your hands, then it just further worsens the situation. A lot of cases, surprisingly, so this depends on from city to city. Like in Guwahati, we don't have organizations or NGOs that conducts urban wildlife rescues. So almost all the owl rescues calls have been placed either by citizens, either the calls are placed by citizens or the citizens themselves carry the owl, the injured owl, to the rescue center, which is in the state zoo. And most of the times, where the citizens have handled the owls have succumbed to their injuries, because you have to understand how sensitive it is to. It's already in shock and it's already traumatized and injured, and you're handling it in all possibly wrong ways. So these are a lot of different threats, and a lot of these threats also play out in combination. It might not be one single threat; it might be different threats which are acting together to sort of, yeah. But hopefully, I mean, there might be even more threats that we haven't come across, and which is why again I kind of reiterate that we really need more studies on us in cities. Yeah.
So, what have been the most prominent challenges you have faced in the Urban Owl project and your PhD?
Challenges, well, well, sort of setting aside the fieldwork part of it, I would say there are some challenges which we can all overcome if we continue the research. Not something that is not something that we cannot overcome, but they really have been challenging so far. And the most the biggest of them is to get in touch with forest departments in different states. So I think we all know that that's a challenge one for everybody working in this field, unless of course you have contacts, or sometimes they can be really nice. But in my case, to get in touch with forest departments and to persuade them to share their data with me, that has been a very big challenge. I mean, see, this is not even data that we need permission for. You've conducted rescues, you've coordinated rescues, you have the data for rescues. There's nothing really to hide. But I have been unsuccessful mostly in this, and I still struggle with this challenge. And again, another thing, again, it might be generic, but it is very true. It's a huge challenge, is funding. I think a lot of people working in this field will also say that funding is a huge challenge for them. But me especially, uh, you know, with this project being multidisciplinary and all, it doesn't really fit into those very rigid categories or areas of funding that we mostly, know of, the funding opportunities that we get. Because I'm not working on a species that is very vulnerable or endangered. Also, I'm not working on those critically, very fragile ecosystems or biodiversity hotspots. I'm working in urban areas, in cities. So it's very difficult to convince, vocally or in written, to emphasize how important the project is and might become in the future. So that is one huge challenge. Apart from that, I think, see, urban ecology and urban wildlife are very new and emergent concepts in India, right? They're pretty, I mean, we have a lot to catch up on. So I do, sometimes it's just a little bit discouraging when you have these seniors or even fellow researchers who question you on why is this, like how is this project even relevant or significant if there is no proper, there's no scientific methods or quantitative methods. Like, um, I employ a lot of, let's say, oral narratives and interviews and multi-species ethnographies and all of that, which a lot of people might question, say that they are not quantifiable, right? You can't really quantify them, you can't measure this, you can't put them on apps and find out, get numbers. And I strongly believe that quant- quantitative research and qualitative research are both equally important. If you can balance the two, mixed methodology, I think you can conduct really amazing research, whatever it is you're working on. But I do face, so initially I was also very, I was not that confident because these questions bothered me, this attitude bothered me. It was like, whatever I'm doing, is it worth it, is it really significant? So that has reduced a bit. Now I'm more, I just try and be sincere, and I'm more confident in what I'm doing, and I really truly believe that it's extremely important. But it does get discouraging sometimes when people you look up to, let's say, they are the ones who come and sort of share that, you know share their worries or concerns, and sort of give you that feeling like, hey, this is not something that I expected you to do, you know but yeah, apart from this, I don't think, I mean, there are always challenges in every research that you're doing. Maybe I'll face more challenges tomorrow when I start conducting other facets of this research. But that's about it.
And how my final question is that how can individuals contribute to the Urban Hour project?
First of all, I really request everyone to contribute, and of course, you can follow Urban Owl Network page on Instagram. It's just at Urban Owl Network. Simply that. You can also write to us at urbanowlnetwork@gmail.com. And so we have links in our bio on Instagram. So one of those links is a questionnaire, the survey that we are doing. It's called Living with Owls. And I implore every person, it doesn't matter which city you're from, what is your age, to please fill that questionnaire up, because it will really help us understand the relationship between humans and owls in cities. And of course, if you have suggestions and comments and ideas for collaboration or outreach for us, I'm always available. Like, I'll be delighted to connect and collaborate. Yeah.
So that was a final question I had for you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Anish. It was wonderful chatting with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
We have reached the end of this episode of the Think Wildlife podcast. If you are still listening, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast and learned something new about conservation. Feel free to leave your thoughts on the episode and don't forget to share and subscribe. Before we end the podcast, I would like to share another podcast on Indian wildlife called The Thing About Wildlife by Ishika Ramakrishna. Also, for those who would like to learn more about conservation in India, I have attached a link to three books on Indian wildlife, which I highly recommend. One is a field guide to the mammals of India by Vivek Menon, which is by far one of the most detailed field guides I have seen from anywhere in the world. The second is titled At the Feet of Living Things, written by the various conservationists at the Nature Conservation Foundation. It covers 25 years of the organization's research, ranging from the conservation of snow leopards in Spiti Valley to rainforest restoration in Annamalai and dugong conservation in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. The final is a four-part series by Mr. H.S. Babla, a former Indian Forest Service officer, which provides a very in-depth analysis of the state of India's conservation and the way forward. It covers species reintroduction, wildlife tourism, the forest rights, and poaching. He also talks about his time as an officer heading various conservation projects in Madhya Pradesh, ranging from the reintroduction of Barasinga and blackbuck to the gore and tackling the Panna poaching crisis. And with that, we end this episode of Think Wildlife Podcast. Thank you once again.